The crimson sun bled across the Montana Territory sky as Emmeline Harper clutched her 4-year-old daughter against the saddle horn, their exhausted horse struggling through the relentless downpour that had turned the usually placid Yellowstone River into a raging torrent. It was the spring of 1876, and what had begun as a journey to reunite with her sister in Helena had become a desperate fight for survival. "Mama, I'm scared," whimpered little Sarah, her golden curls plastered to her forehead as thunder cracked overhead. "Hush now, darling." "We'll be across soon," Emmeline promised, though uncertainty gnawed at her heart. At 26, the young widow had already endured more hardship than most, losing her husband to pneumonia. The previous winter had left her alone to manage their small homestead in Dakota Territory, until she could no longer bear the isolation. The horse stumbled on hidden rocks beneath the swirling water, its footing increasingly uncertain as they ventured farther from the bank. The river, swollen from days of spring rain, rushed around them with frightening power. "Easy, Maple," Emmeline soothed, but her words were lost to the roar of the current. A flash of lightning illuminated the far shore, still impossibly distant, just as Maple lost her footing entirely. The mare whinnied in terror as the current swept her sideways, and Emmeline felt the sickening sensation of falling. Cold water engulfed them as she was torn from the saddle, one arm locked around Sarah while her free hand grasped desperately for anything solid. "Help!" She screamed, the word half swallowed by the churning waters. "Please, someone help us!" Sarah's terrified cries pierced through the chaos as Emmeline fought to keep their heads above water. The current pulled them mercilessly downstream, spinning them through rapids and dragging them under momentarily before allowing them to surface, gasping and choking. "Hold tight to me, Sarah," Emmeline managed between desperate breaths. Her sodden skirts weighed her down like anchors, and her strength was fading fast. Each time she went under, it became harder to fight her way back to the surface. From the riverbank half a mile downstream, Nathan Quinn lowered his binoculars, his heart pounding. He'd been tracking a herd of wild mustangs along the river when he spotted the commotion in the water. Without hesitation, he spurred his stallion toward the roiling waters, dust flying beneath the animal's hooves. "Hang on," he shouted, though he knew they couldn't hear him. At 30, Nathan had spent most of his adult life as a drifter, working cattle drives and breaking horses across the Western Territories. The mountains of Montana had called to him in recent years, and he'd started a modest horse ranch 10 miles outside of Billings. He was no stranger to the river's deadly spring moods. Reaching a bend where the current slowed slightly, Nathan dismounted in one fluid motion and stripped off his gun, belt, and boots. He could see them clearly now, a woman with honey-colored hair and a small child, being tossed like rag dolls in the current. Their horse was nowhere to be seen. Nathan plunged into the frigid water without hesitation, the shock of cold stealing his breath momentarily before his powerful strokes carried him toward the struggling pair. Years of swimming in mountain rivers had prepared him for the current's pull, but even he found himself fighting against its formidable strength. Emmeline's vision was blurring, her arms aching from the effort of holding Sarah above water. She barely registered the approaching figure until strong arms wrapped around both of them. "I've got you," a deep voice assured her. "Don't fight me." Emmeline felt herself being pulled sideways through the current, her daughter pressed between her chest and the stranger's. The man swam with powerful, sure strokes, angling them gradually toward the shore while fighting the river's determined pull. It seemed an eternity before Emmeline felt her feet scrape against the rocky riverbed. The stranger lifted Sarah first, carrying her to dry land before returning for Emmeline, who could barely stand. His arm around her waist was all that kept her upright as they staggered from the water's reach. "Sarah," Emmeline gasped, reaching for her daughter who sat shivering on the rocky shore. "She's all right," the man assured her, his voice low and steady. "Just scared." As Emmeline collapsed beside her daughter, she got her first clear look at their rescuer. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and penetrating blue eyes that assessed them with concern. His soaked shirt clung to a muscular frame that spoke of years of hard work. "Thank you," she managed, teeth chattering. "You saved our lives." "Nathan Quinn," he replied simply, already shrugging out of his vest to drape around Sarah's trembling shoulders. "My cabin's not far. You need to get warm before nightfall." Sarah clung to Emmeline, wide-eyed but calmer now that they were on solid ground. "Mama, where's Maple?" Emmeline exchanged a glance with Nathan, who shook his head almost imperceptibly. "I don't know, sweetheart," she answered honestly, her heart aching for the faithful mare. "My horse is up the bank," Nathan said, gesturing to where a large Palomino stallion stood watching them. "He can carry us all to shelter." Too exhausted to protest, Emmeline allowed Nathan to help her to her feet. He whistled sharply, and the Palomino approached, nickering softly. Nathan lifted Sarah first, settling her on the saddle before helping Emmeline mount behind her. Then he swung up behind them both, one arm circling Emmeline's waist to steady her as he took the reins with his free hand. "Hold on," he instructed, his breath warm against her ear. "It's not far." The ride to Nathan's cabin passed in a blur for Emmeline, her consciousness fading in and out as exhaustion and shock took their toll. She was vaguely aware of the solid warmth of the man behind her, his arm keeping her secure even as her body sagged against him. The cabin appeared through the trees as the rain began to ease a sturdy log structure with smoke curling from the stone chimney. A small corral stood adjacent, where several horses raised their heads at their approach. "You're a horse trader?" Emmeline asked, finding her voice as Nathan helped her dismount. "Breeder and trainer," he corrected, lifting Sarah down. "Been working this spread for 3 years now." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, with a central fireplace already blazing. Nathan moved with efficient purpose, stoking the fire and retrieving blankets from a trunk while Emmeline held Sarah close. "There's a screen in the corner," he said, nodding toward a wooden partition. "I'll leave some dry clothes for you both. They'll be too big, but they're clean and dry. I'll make some coffee and heat some stew while you change." Emmeline murmured her thanks, too grateful for the unexpected kindness to feel awkward about wearing a stranger's clothing. Behind the screen, she helped Sarah out of her sodden dress and into one of Nathan's shirts, which hung to the child's ankles like a nightgown. For herself, Emmeline found a flannel shirt and trousers that she cinched with a length of rope. The masculine clothing felt strange against her skin, but the blessed warmth outweighed any impropriety. When they emerged, Nathan had set out 3 bowls of steaming venison stew and mugs of coffee, with milk for Sarah. He'd changed into dry clothes himself and added more logs to the fire. "You're very kind, Mr. Quinn," Emmeline said as they settled at the rough-hewn table. "I don't know how to thank you properly." "Nathan," he corrected, passing her a mug, "and there's no need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone would have risked their life diving into that current," Emmeline countered softly. Nathan's eyes met hers briefly before returning to his stew. "I grew up near water. Swimming comes natural to me." As they ate, Emmeline explained their journey, how she'd sold her homestead after her husband's death and was traveling to Helena to join her sister. They'd been making good progress until the storm hit, forcing them to attempt the river crossing that morning when the normal ford had seemed passable. "The spring melt makes that crossing treacherous," Nathan explained. "Local folks know to wait until June." "I see that now," Emmeline admitted. "I should have asked for better directions in Billings." Sarah had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder by the time they finished eating. Nathan showed them to the cabin's single bed, insisting he would take a bedroll by the fire. "You need proper rest after what you've been through," he said firmly when Emmeline protested. "We can figure out your next steps in the morning." Too exhausted to argue, Emmeline tucked Sarah beneath the thick quilt and slid in beside her. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Nathan's tall figure silhouetted against the firelight, his movements quiet and deliberate as he banked the flames for the night. Dawn broke clear and golden after the storm, sunlight streaming through the cabin's small windows. Emmeline woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, finding Sarah already up and seated on a stool near the fire, watching with fascination as Nathan cooked breakfast. "Good morning," he greeted Emmeline, a hint of warmth in his usually reserved expression. "Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months," she admitted, running a hand through her tangled hair. "Thank you again for your hospitality." Over breakfast, Nathan offered a suggestion that caught Emmeline by surprise. "The trail to Helena will be washed out in several places after that storm," he explained. "It could be a week or more before it's passable, especially for a woman traveling alone with a child." Emmeline's heart sank. She had so little money left after the journey thus far. "You're welcome to stay here until conditions improve," Nathan continued, his gaze steady. "I have plenty of space, and I could use some help with the horses if you're willing. Consider it payment for your lodging." "You barely know us," Emmeline said hesitantly. Nathan shrugged. "I know enough. You're in trouble and need a safe place. I've got one to offer." Sarah looked up hopefully. "Can we stay with the horses, Mama, please?" Looking at her daughter's eager face, Emmeline felt a weight lifting. Perhaps this unexpected detour was Providence. "If you're certain we won't be a burden, we accept your offer," she said. "And I'm quite capable around horses. My father raised them in Pennsylvania before we moved west." Nathan nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We'll see about that." The next few days established a comfortable routine. Nathan taught Sarah to groom the gentler mares while Emmeline helped with feeding and exercising the younger horses. Despite her claims, it quickly became apparent that her experience with horses was limited to riding and basic care, not the training Nathan specialized in. "You've never actually broken a horse, have you?" he asked on the third day, leaning against the corral fence as Emmeline struggled to maintain control of a spirited 2-year-old filly. "Not exactly," she admitted, relinquishing the lead rope to him with a sheepish smile. "But I'm learning." Nathan chuckled, the sound transforming his usually solemn face. "That you are. You've got a natural way with them, actually. Just need some technique." Under his patient instruction, Emmeline's skills improved rapidly. She found herself looking forward to their daily lessons, enjoying both the challenge of the work and Nathan's company. Though initially taciturn, he gradually revealed more of himself, how he'd left his family's farm in Missouri at 18 to seek adventure in the West. His years working cattle drives from Texas to Montana, and finally his decision to settle and build something of his own. "Never thought I'd stay in one place long enough to put down roots," he confessed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Sarah chase fireflies in the twilight. "But something about this valley felt like home." Emmeline understood that feeling all too well. "Thomas, my husband, felt that way about our homestead. I never quite shared his vision, though I tried." She sighed softly. "Perhaps that's why leaving wasn't as difficult as it should have been." Nathan studied her profile in the fading light. "And your sister in Helena." "You're certain that's where you belong?" "I'm not certain of anything anymore," Emmeline admitted, "except that I need to provide a stable life for Sarah." The days stretched into a week, then 2. Nathan rode into Billings for supplies, returning with news that the trail to Helena remained problematic in several sections, though it would likely clear within another week. Emmeline received this information with surprisingly mixed feelings. Sarah had bloomed under Nathan's quiet attention. He taught her to whistle for the horses, carved her a small wooden filly, and answered her endless questions with remarkable patience. In the evenings, he sometimes told stories of his travels carefully edited for young ears that left Sarah wide-eyed with wonder. "I like Mr. Nathan," Sarah confided one night as Emmeline tucked her into bed. "He smells like sunshine and horses." "Does he now?" Emmeline smiled, smoothing her daughter's curls. Can we stay here instead of going to Aunt Margaret's? Sarah asked hopefully. We're just guests here, sweetheart, Emmeline reminded her, though the words caused an unexpected pang. Mr. Nathan has his own life. But as the days passed, Emmeline found herself wondering if that life might have room for them. She'd caught Nathan watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression thoughtful and occasionally tender. Their hands had brushed while working together, lingering a moment longer than necessary. Small moments that kindled a warmth she'd thought extinguished by Thomas's death. One afternoon, while Sarah napped, Nathan invited Emmeline to ride with him to check on a mare that had recently foaled in the upper pasture. They rode side by side through meadows brilliant with spring wildflowers, the sky an endless blue above the distant mountains. You've changed since you arrived, Nathan observed, breaking a comfortable silence. Have I? Emmeline glanced at him curiously. You smile more, stand taller. His eyes held hers briefly before returning to the trail. It suits you. The simple compliment brought heat to her cheeks. Perhaps it's the mountain air. Perhaps, he agreed, though his tone suggested he thought otherwise. The mare and her foal were grazing peacefully in a sheltered meadow, the gangly colt nursing vigorously when they approached. Nathan dismounted to check the pair, his hands gentle as he examined them. He's strong, he commented as the foal kicked playfully. Going to be a fine stallion someday. Emmeline slid from her horse to join him, captivated by the tender scene. You have a gift with them. I've never seen someone so naturally attuned to horses. Nathan shrugged off the compliment, but pleasure flickered across his features. They're honest creatures, no pretense or deception, easier to understand than people most times. Is that why you live so far from town? To avoid the complications of people, Emmeline asked, genuinely curious about this solitary man who had so unexpectedly become important to her. Nathan considered her question, stroking the mare's neck thoughtfully. Partly. I've never been much for crowds or idle conversation, but lately. He trailed off, his gaze finding hers. Lately, I've been wondering if I've been missing something important. The intensity in his eyes made Emmeline's heart quicken. They stood close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his blue irises, the day's stubble darkening his jaw. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her and realized with startling clarity that she wanted him to. Instead, he cleared his throat and stepped back. Storm's brewing, he said, nodding toward distant clouds gathering over the mountains. We should head back before it catches us. They rode home in a charged silence, both aware that something significant had shifted between them. The thunderstorm broke just as they reached the cabin, sending them rushing inside laughing as rain poured from the darkened sky. Sarah greeted them excitedly, having woken from her nap to find them gone. I thought you left me, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Emmeline's waist. Never, Emmeline promised, kneeling to embrace her daughter. We just went to check on the new baby horse. Can I see him tomorrow? Sarah asked, turning her hopeful gaze to Nathan. If the weather clears, he agreed, his expression softening as it always did around the child. He's about ready for visitors. That evening, after Sarah had fallen asleep, Emmeline joined Nathan on the porch where he sat watching the rain. She'd come to treasure these quiet moments together, when conversation flowed more easily between them. I received a letter from my sister while you were in town, she said, settling beside him on the bench. She says I'm welcome to stay as long as needed, but... Emmeline hesitated, uncertain how to express her growing doubts. But, Nathan prompted gently, but I'm no longer sure that's the right path for us. She took a deep breath. My sister's husband runs a successful mercantile. They live comfortably, but their life is very prescribed. Margaret has always embraced propriety and social expectations. Nathan nodded, understanding. And you're wondering if you'd fit into that world. I thought I wanted that security, Emmeline admitted. After losing Thomas, all I could think about was finding safe harbor for Sarah. But these past weeks... She gestured toward the open land beyond the porch. I've felt more alive here than I have in years. The confession hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Nathan turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the lantern light. "What are you saying, Emmeline?" Her courage nearly failed her, but she pressed on. "I'm saying that perhaps there are different kinds of security, different ways to build a life." "And if I were to suggest a way that included staying here?" Nathan asked, his voice low and careful. "Not as a guest or a hired hand, but as what?" she whispered when he didn't continue. Nathan reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "I never planned on a family, convinced myself I was better suited to solitude, but having you and Sarah here." He swallowed visibly. "The thought of this cabin empty again feels wrong now." Emmeline's heart thundered in her chest. "Nathan, are you asking us to stay?" "I'm asking if you could see a future here, with me." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I know it's sudden, we barely know each other. But I feel like I've been waiting for you without realizing it." Tears pricked at Emmeline's eyes, not of sadness but overwhelming emotion. "I thought I was being foolish, feeling this way so quickly." "If it's foolishness, then we're fools together," Nathan murmured, drawing her closer. "Stay, Emmeline. Give us a chance to see what this could become." In answer, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Nathan's arms encircled her. When they finally parted, both breathless, Emmeline rested her forehead against his. "Yes," she whispered. "We'll stay." The weeks that followed were filled with a joy Emmeline had never expected to find again. Nathan proved to be a patient and attentive suitor, careful not to rush their developing relationship despite their living arrangement. To preserve propriety, he insisted on sleeping in the small lean-to attached to the barn, giving Emmeline and Sarah the cabin to themselves. "People will talk enough without giving them additional reasons," he explained when Emmeline protested the discomfort. "Besides, my reputation in these parts matters now in a way it didn't before." His thoughtfulness only deepened her growing feelings for him. Nathan's consideration extended to Sarah as well, involving her in age-appropriate tasks around the ranch and spending time each evening reading to her or teaching her simple card games. The child blossomed under his attention, her nightmares about the river gradually fading as she settled into their new routine. One memorable afternoon, Nathan took them to a secluded pool fed by a mountain spring, where the water ran clear and calm. Sarah initially balked at entering the water, memories of the raging river still fresh in her mind. "It's all right to be afraid," Nathan told her, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Fear keeps us cautious, but we can't let it stop us from living. What if I sink?" Sarah whispered, clinging to Emmeline's hand. "Then I'll be right there to catch you," Nathan promised. Just like before. With patient encouragement, he coaxed Sarah into the shallows, supporting her as she gradually relaxed in the gentle current. By the end of the afternoon, she was splashing happily and even managed a few dog paddle strokes with Nathan's hands steadying her. "You're a natural teacher," Emmeline observed as they watched Sarah playing at the water's edge. "Have you ever thought about having children of your own?" Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. "Never seriously, until recently. Didn't think I had much to offer a family." His eyes found hers. "My own father wasn't exactly an example worth following." Emmeline had learned bits of Nathan's childhood over their weeks together: his father's drinking, the poverty that had driven him to leave home young, his mother's early death, the hardships that had shaped him into a man who valued honesty and hard work above all else. "You have more to offer than you realize," she said softly, reaching for his hand. "Sarah adores you." A smile transformed his face. "The feeling is mutual. She's an extraordinary child, Emmeline. You've raised her well." "We've managed," Emmeline replied, throat tight with emotion. "But she needs stability, consistency, a place to put down roots." "And a father figure?" Nathan asked carefully. "Yes," Emmeline admitted, "though I would never rush you into such a role." Nathan squeezed her hand. "Some things don't need rushing to feel right." In early June, 6 weeks after the river rescue, Nathan rode into Billings for supplies and returned with unexpected news. A former Army scout passing through town had recognized Nathan and mentioned seeing a stray horse matching Maple's description near a settler's homestead 30 miles downriver. Could be nothing, Nathan cautioned, not wanting to raise false hopes. But I thought you should know. If you'd like, we could ride out tomorrow to investigate. The journey took most of the day, with Sarah riding in front of Nathan while Emmeline followed on one of his gentler mares. The homestead proved to be a small but tidy affair run by an elderly couple who had indeed found a bedraggled horse wandering near their property shortly after the spring storms. When the mare was brought from the pasture, Sarah's excited cry confirmed their hopes. "Maple! Mama, it's Maple." The horse was thinner than before, but otherwise unharmed, nickering softly as Emmeline approached with tears in her eyes. "I never thought we'd see her again," she murmured, stroking the familiar velvet muzzle. The elderly couple refused payment for Maple's care, saying her companionship had been payment enough. "Besides," the old woman added with a knowing smile at Nathan and Emmeline, "looks like she's heading to a good home." On the return journey, with Maple following on a lead rope, Nathan broached a subject that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking about expanding the operation," he said, as they rode side by side through golden afternoon light. "The valley to the north of my property came up for sale last month. Good grazing land with a spring-fed creek running through it." "That sounds promising," Emmeline replied, curious about his suddenly businesslike tone. "It would mean building a larger house," Nathan continued, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "The cabin's fine for a bachelor, but for a family." He cleared his throat. "What I'm trying to say, Emmeline, is that I'd like to provide a proper home for you and Sarah, if you'll have me." Emmeline reined her horse to a stop, prompting Nathan to do the same. "Nathan Quinn, are you proposing to me on the trail home from retrieving my horse?" A flush crept up his neck. "I had a more romantic scenario planned, but yes, I suppose I am." He shifted Sarah to a more secure position and reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small silver ring set with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained, "the only thing of value she left behind." Emmeline's heart swelled as she extended her hand. "It's perfect." "Does that mean yes?" Nathan asked, hope evident in his voice. "It means yes," Emmeline confirmed, laughing as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Though I insist we wait at least until the end of summer before marrying. I won't have people saying you were forced into this by circumstance. 6 weeks or 6 years wouldn't change my mind," Nathan declared, leaning across the space between their horses to kiss her briefly. "But I'll wait as long as you need." "What's happening?" Sarah asked, twisting to look between them. "Why are you kissing?" Nathan chuckled. "Well, Miss Sarah, I've just asked your mother if she'll marry me. That means we'd be a family together and I'd be your pa. Would that be all right with you?" Sarah considered this solemnly before breaking into a wide smile. "Will we stay with the horses?" "Yes, we'll stay with the horses," Emmeline assured her, heart full to bursting at her daughter's simple acceptance. "Then it's all right," Sarah decided, settling back against Nathan's chest contentedly. The summer unfolded in a cascade of activity as they prepared for both the wedding and the expansion of the ranch. Nathan purchased the neighboring valley and hired men from Billings to help construct a proper 2-story farmhouse adjacent to the existing cabin, which would be converted to a bunkhouse for occasional hired hands. Emmeline wrote to her sister with the news, receiving a surprised but supportive reply along with a promise to attend the wedding. Local families, initially curious about the woman and child Nathan Quinn had taken in, gradually accepted Emmeline as she became involved in community gatherings and church socials. "You've changed this place," Nathan observed one evening as they sat on the cabin porch watching the sunset. Sarah had already been tucked into bed, exhausted from a day of helping the builders. "It used to be just land and horses to me. Now it feels like a home." Emmeline leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she'd never experienced before. You saved us from the river, but in many ways, you saved us from drifting through life as well." "We saved each other," Nathan corrected, his arm tightening around her. "I was existing, not living, before you washed up on my shore." They married in late August beneath the cottonwood trees by the creek, with Sarah as their flower girl and Emmeline's sister Margaret as her witness. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, attended by neighbors and the handful of friends Nathan had made during his years in the territory. Emmeline wore a new blue dress ordered from a catalog, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. "I, Nathan, take you, Emmeline, to be my wife," he vowed, his voice steady and sure. "To stand beside you through all waters, calm or turbulent from this day forward." Emmeline's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought her to this moment. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan's kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of all that awaited them. The new house was completed just as autumn gilded the surrounding hills. With 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a covered porch wrapping around 2 sides, it represented everything Emmeline had dreamed of, but never dared hope for. Sarah claimed the bedroom with the eastern window, delighted by the small desk Nathan had commissioned specifically for her. "For your schoolwork," he explained, ruffling her curls affectionately. "Every rancher's daughter needs a proper education." Their first Christmas as a family brought a blanket of snow, and the news that Emmeline was expecting a child in the summer. Nathan's reaction to the announcement stunned silence, followed by whoops of joy that startled the horses, became a story she would tell for years to come. A baby brother. Sarah asked hopefully when they told her the news. "Or a sister," Emmeline explained. "We won't know until the baby arrives." Sarah considered this information seriously. "I think it should be a brother. Then we'll have 2 girls and 2 boys in our family." Nathan laughed, lifting Sarah onto his shoulders. "I'll see what I can arrange, but these things aren't exactly up to us." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter months. Nathan proved to be an attentive husband, insisting on hiring a woman from town to help with household chores as Emmeline's condition advanced. Their nights were spent planning for the future, expanding the horse breeding operation, adding cattle eventually, ensuring Sarah would have educational opportunities despite their rural location. "I never thought I'd have this," Nathan confessed one night, his hand resting on the swell of Emmeline's abdomen where their child grew. "A wife, children, land of my own, it seemed like something meant for other men. And I never thought I'd find love again," Emmeline replied softly. "Especially not at the bottom of a river." Nathan chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. Fate has strange methods. In June, almost exactly a year after their first meeting, Emmeline gave birth to a healthy son they named James Thomas Quinn. Sarah, now 5, appointed herself his official protector, insisting on helping with every aspect of baby care that her mother would allow. "She's going to be a wonderful big sister," Emmeline observed as they watched Sarah singing softly to the sleeping infant. "She learned from the best," Nathan replied, his eyes filled with love as he gazed at his family. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible, Emmeline." "As have you," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "Who would have thought that terrible day on the river would lead to this?" "Sometimes the current takes you exactly where you need to go," Nathan mused. "Even when it feels like you're drowning." As summer mellowed into autumn once more, the Quinn Ranch flourished. Nathan's reputation as a horse breeder spread throughout the territory, bringing buyers from as far as Wyoming and Idaho. Emmeline established a small vegetable garden and orchard, determined to make their land as self-sufficient as possible. Sarah started her formal education, riding to the newly established schoolhouse 3 miles away with Nathan or Emmeline accompanying her until she was older. Little James grew into a sturdy, curious baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. When he took his first steps on the porch overlooking the horse pasture, Nathan declared it proof that he was destined to be a rancher. He'll have choices, Emmeline reminded him. Just as Sarah will. Of course, Nathan agreed readily, but a man can hope. On the anniversary of the river rescue, Nathan surprised Emmeline by taking her to the spot where he'd pulled her and Sarah from the water. The Yellowstone flowed peacefully now, its spring fury long subsided. I come here sometimes, he admitted, as they stood hand in hand on the bank. To remember how quickly life can change. Emmeline squeezed his fingers, understanding completely. I think about it every day when I look at Sarah and James, how close we came to losing everything and how much we've gained instead. Nathan turned to face her, brushing a strand of honey-colored hair from her cheek. I want to build something here, a stone marker or monument of some kind, not just for us, but for travelers who might not know the river's dangers. That's a wonderful idea, Emmeline agreed, touched by his thoughtfulness. A reminder to respect the water's power. And to celebrate second chances, Nathan added, drawing her into his arms. Because that's what you gave me, Emmeline, a second chance at a life I didn't even know I wanted. Their kiss was interrupted by the distant sound of children's laughter as Sarah chased butterflies in the meadow where they'd left her playing under the watchful eye of Nathan's ranch hand. We should get back, Emmeline said reluctantly. James will be waking from his nap soon. Nathan nodded, but held her a moment longer. I love you, Emmeline Quinn, more than I have words to express. Show me instead, she suggested with a smile that was both tender and mischievous. Tonight, when the children are asleep. Mrs. Quinn, Nathan replied with mock scandalization, are you attempting to seduce your husband in broad daylight? Merely making plans, Emmeline laughed, taking his hand as they walked back toward their waiting daughter. Isn't that what we do best? Make plans and build dreams together. Indeed we do, Nathan agreed, his face alight with happiness. Indeed we do. As the years passed, the Quinn Ranch grew into one of the most respected horse breeding operations in Montana Territory. Nathan's expertise combined with Emmeline's business acumen proved a formidable partnership, allowing them to weather economic downturns and harsh winters that drove other ranchers to sell out. Sarah, growing into a confident young woman with her mother's golden hair and quick wit, developed a talent for training even the most difficult horses. By 16, she was handling colts that experienced cowhands approached with caution, her natural empathy allowing her to connect with the animals in a way that amazed even Nathan. She's better than I was at twice her age, he confided to Emmeline with paternal pride as they watched Sarah gentling a spirited black filly in the round pen. James, now 11, showed equal enthusiasm for ranch life, but combined it with a scholarly inclination that delighted his mother. He devoured books on veterinary medicine and animal husbandry, applying theoretical knowledge to practical situations with a maturity that belied his years. The family had expanded again with the arrival of twin daughters, Elizabeth and Catherine, when James was 4. The twins, now 7, were inseparable companions who balanced each other, perfectly Elizabeth thoughtful and observant, Catherine bold and adventurous. On a warm August evening in 1887, as they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary with a gathering of friends and neighbors, Emmeline found a moment of quiet reflection on the porch of their home. The ranch had grown to encompass over 2,000 acres, with a reputation that reached beyond Montana's borders. Their herd of breeding stock numbered nearly 100 horses, with specialized bloodlines developed specifically for endurance, cattle work, or speed. Nathan joined her, slipping an arm around her waist as they gazed out at the land they'd built together. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Quinn? I was just thinking about that day on the river, Emmeline admitted. How terrified I was, certain that Sarah and I were going to die. Nathan's arm tightened around her. I still have nightmares about it sometimes, seeing you in the water, not reaching you in time. But you did reach us, Emmeline reminded him, turning in his embrace to face him. The years had added silver threads to his dark hair and deepened the laugh lines around his eyes, but he remained as handsome to her as the day they'd met. "You've been reaching for us and holding us ever since." "Best decision I ever made," Nathan murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Diving into that river changed everything." "For all of us," Emmeline agreed. She glanced back toward the gathering, where Sarah was teaching the twins a dance while James engaged the local doctor in an earnest discussion about horse ailments. "I couldn't have imagined this life when I set out for Helena. Do you ever regret not continuing on?" Nathan asked, a question he hadn't posed in many years. "Settling for this instead of the city life your sister has?" Emmeline laughed, genuinely amused by the suggestion. "Settle?" "Nathan Quinn, I have never settled for anything in my life with you. This," she gestured to encompass their home, family, and land, "this is beyond anything I could have dreamed. This is abundance." Nathan's smile held all the love and partnership of their years together. "Even with the hardships, the blizzard of '81 that nearly wiped us out, the year the creek ran dry and we had to haul water for months, especially with those," Emmeline insisted. "We weathered them together, just as we enjoyed the good years together. That's what makes a life worth living." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah, who approached with a young man in tow. Martin Fletcher was the son of the regional bank manager and had been calling on Sarah with increasing frequency in recent months, much to Nathan's carefully concealed consternation. "Mother, father," Sarah began, her cheeks flushed with excitement, "Martin has something he'd like to discuss with you both." Nathan straightened, his expression shifting to what the children called his business face, polite but reserved. Emmeline squeezed his hand in silent support, knowing how difficult he found the prospect of Sarah's eventual departure from the ranch. "Mr. and Mrs. Quinn," Martin began, admirably steady despite Nathan's intimidating stance, "I've come to ask your permission to court Sarah properly, with the intention of marriage if she'll have me." Nathan remained silent long enough that Emmeline felt compelled to speak first. "You're both very young," she observed gently. "Sarah has just turned 17, and you yourself are only 20, Martin." "Yes, madam," Martin acknowledged. "I'm not proposing an immediate marriage, rather a formal courtship with your blessing. I intend to finish my banking apprenticeship first, which will take another year at least." Sarah looked between her parents anxiously. "Please consider it. Martin respects the ranch and understands how important it is to me. He's not asking me to choose between my family and a future with him." This thoughtful statement seemed to reach Nathan, whose expression softened slightly. "You've discussed this thoroughly, then?" "Yes, sir," Martin replied. "I know Sarah's heart is here. My father is considering opening a bank branch in Billings, which would allow us to live nearby. And I've been learning about ranch financing specifically because I understand the Quinn operation will always be part of Sarah's life." Emmeline watched her husband carefully, seeing the internal struggle between protecting his daughter and respecting her growing independence. Finally, Nathan extended his hand to the young man. "You have our permission to court Sarah," he said formally, "with the understanding that no engagement will be announced before her 18th birthday." Sarah's face lit with joy as Martin shook Nathan's hand firmly. "Thank you, sir. I promise to honor your conditions." As the young couple returned to the celebration, Emmeline leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder. "That was well handled," she murmured, "though I know it wasn't easy." "She deserves a chance at the same happiness we found," Nathan replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Even if it means watching her build a life beyond the ranch." "She'll never go far," Emmeline assured him. "The river that brought us here runs in her blood, too." The mention of the river sparked a memory. "Did I tell you the monument is finally approved? The county commissioners agreed it should be placed at the crossing, with directions to safer passage points and a warning about spring flooding." "That's wonderful news," Emmeline said. "When will it be installed?" "Next month, if the stonemason finishes on schedule." Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. "I've been thinking about the inscription, something about respecting nature's power, but also about the unexpected blessings that can come from adversity." Like a family born from a river's rage, Emmeline suggested softly. Nathan nodded, drawing her closer as the sunset painted the Montana sky in hues of gold and crimson. Exactly like that. In the years that followed, the Quinn Ranch continued to thrive under their shared stewardship. Sarah eventually married Martin Fletcher in a ceremony held beneath the same cottonwood trees, where Nathan and Emmeline had exchanged their vows. True to his word, Martin established himself in Billings, where his financial expertise proved invaluable to local ranchers, and his understanding of agricultural cycles set him apart from other bankers. James pursued his interest in veterinary medicine, studying in Denver before returning to Montana with knowledge that benefited not only the Quinn horses but livestock throughout the region. The twins found their own paths, Elizabeth as a teacher in the expanded local school, Catherine as a skilled horsewoman who took over much of the training program when Nathan's shoulders began to trouble him in his 50s. The stone monument at the river crossing became a local landmark, its simple message serving as both warning and inspiration to travelers. Respect the river's power. Lives lost and found in these waters. The current that threatens may also deliver you home. On the 20th anniversary of their rescue and meeting, Nathan and Emmeline returned to the river's edge alone. Now in their 50s, with the silver in their hair matching the sheen of the water, they stood hand in hand where their shared story had begun. "Did you ever imagine we'd build all this?" Emmeline asked, gesturing toward the distant buildings of the ranch, visible on the high ground beyond the river valley. "Not in my wildest dreams," Nathan admitted. "I was a solitary man with modest ambitions before you and Sarah tumbled into my life." "And now look at us," Emmeline laughed. "Grandparents 3 times over with a legacy that will outlast us both." Nathan's eyes, still piercingly blue despite the years, held hers with the same intensity that had always moved her. The best part of building it was doing it together. Side by side, through every challenge and triumph. "The river brought us together," Emmeline mused, "but love kept us that way." "It still does," Nathan affirmed, drawing her into an embrace that felt as right and necessary as breathing. "It always will." Above them, an eagle soared on thermal currents, its flight effortless and graceful. Below, the river continued its eternal journey, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but always moving forward much like the love that had carried Nathan and Emmeline from a desperate rescue to a life overflowing with purpose, family, and enduring devotion. "Should we head back?" Emmeline asked eventually. "The family will be gathering for supper soon." "In a moment," Nathan replied, still holding her close. "I'm not quite ready to leave this spot just yet." As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across the land they'd nurtured together, Emmeline rested her head against her husband's chest, listening to the steady heartbeat that had become the rhythm of her life. The river murmured its endless song beside them, a reminder of both danger survived, and blessings received the current that had nearly claimed them and ultimately saved them, delivering them not just to shore, but home.